They said, no, Dave, we want to talk to you. We want to hear your point of view with all these people, because you died, and you know with all these thousands of people just what they just experienced.
They were thrilled to meet me. They all hugged me. They all kissed me. The women, do you remember the Breck Girl commercials? Okay. They were all shiny, just like that. Okay? And the men too. The men were just radiant. And there were no clothing on anybody, but there were no sexual characteristics either. Nothing. Just beauty, shining, energy, love. That was it. Unbelievable. So then it came time for my examination as to whether I could get into paradise. And clearly this was paradise.
What I knew when I came back was, I know that light was of God. It was of or from. I didn't think the light itself was necessarily God, although it could be. I don't know. Nobody gave me that answer, at least not that I can remember. But I know that light is a part of God, or a part of what God emits, because it's a kind of love that can't even be explained. It is so hard to explain what being unconditionally loved is, or what it feels like. But it feels like the safest, most exalted feeling. Well, you see, it's ineffable. You run out of words when you try to explain it. But there's no other source that something like that could come from except some power, and that power is love. Now, I call it God.
And this process continued for some time until I got to the edge of the light. And I found at this point I had a sense of my body still. I had my consciousness, but a sense of being in a body that I didn't have for a little while. But it became more apparent as I started merging with the light. And in that mergence, I noticed that my body started becoming the light and becoming the infinite. And that was pretty cool. I kept merging with it, and to the point my consciousness also started merging with it. And I would move far enough into the light that I recognized that if I moved any further, Jim would disappear.
It wasn't difficult at all. It was a staged process. And like I said, I don't think I've been a perfect little angel. And yet, in my dying, it was kind of in stages. I mean, I first saw my body from a distance. I viewed what was happening. My body was being destroyed, and I watched it from a ways away. And then I found myself in a place of beauty, of light, bright aqua blue, beautiful light, sound, color. It was a place of perfect harmony and bliss. And then I found myself in the white light. It's not like I tried to go or I had to be judged to go. I was the white light. I was in the white light. There was no difficulty in going there at all. So for me, it was perfectly easy.
In my experience of going into the white light and then meeting Jesus, my master or teacher, then sitting in God's lap, I recall the question that came to mind: how could this ever happen to me? And the response was, "This is where we are always, if we could only remember."
And they took me to Niagara Falls, which was one of my bucket list things. And we went behind the falls, and I was back in my near-death experience. There was something about the thundering power of that water and the energy to be behind the water. And I invite anyone, if you want to know something about what it might be like to be with this kind of brilliance and perfection and energy, you can go behind Niagara Falls and just let it, you know. Again, I had like eyeballs. I could see, and this light spread out in all directions, and I could turn and see as if I'd had a head. But at the same time, it was layering back endlessly. I have no words to describe this, but yet I had enough awareness to think I was perceiving linear time as well as what I think were dimensions. That's what I believe the layers were. It was infinite. And not only was it infinite, but there was nothing else to this light but love. And you know, there aren't any words. If I had been in flesh, I think I would have just disintegrated.
It was very natural to me. When I first, because I drowned, and it was very violent death, because it was in a storm, and it was very violent. But before I went into the light, I found myself in a darkness. But the darkness was, I could see where it might be frightening for some people, but for me it wasn't. It was more of a curiosity to me, and it was warm and welcoming. And the transition from the dark to the light just seemed the most natural process in the world for me. It didn't feel like, it was almost like the darkness was like a staging area almost. I don't know how to express it. Because it allowed me, because I died a violent death. The drowning in 25 to 30 foot seas was an incredibly violent death. And I found myself in this darkness, and it was quiet, and it was comfortable. And it was devoid of that violence, devoid of that fury that my body was in. And it allowed my being to find a comfort before transiting into the light. And I didn't go through a tunnel. The light appeared in the distance, and I moved toward it. I don't know if I moved toward it, it moved toward me, but there was movement into the light. And it was the most natural thing in the world. Most natural thing beyond this world. Mm-hmm. It didn't require any sort of rituals or any sort of, I didn't have to jump through any hoops or anything. It was just a matter of I was ready to go toward that light, and I went toward that light.